What's up, mortgage coach and sales boomerang community? Dave Savage sitting down with Todd Ballenger. We want to have a conversation around the financial literacy opportunity in America. I mean, this is something that has always been part of the mortgage coach and sales boomerang ethos. No borrower left behind, borrow education, making sure that every time loan officers deliver mortgage advice, they're leaving people smarter about money. But there's a couple things going on. It's just, I think the opportunity is getting bigger. It's getting more clear. Todd has a nonprofit. Todd has a whole lot of just resources to educate families, resources to educate loan officers, as well as Kristen Messerly and I have been talking for really years about having a financial literacy type nonprofit. And it was just a lot of things coming together, and Mr. Mr. Ballenger has done some new research and come up with some new ideas and some new insights that I think are valuable to every loan officer in America, but most importantly, every mortgage coach and sales boomerang mortgage professional. So Todd, why don't you put your frame on what you got, and then let's get into some of your newest insights.
Yeah. So, Dave and I were talking, it was just probably a week ago, about financial literacy and kind of what's happening out there in the market today. And so just had a good night's sleep at a Holiday Inn and got up one morning and said, hey, I'm going to go read a bunch about this. Started reading some papers, read, 5 to 8 recent papers on financial literacy and some of the key dynamics. And there were a few things here and there that surprised me, but then I took that, tried to organize it into a short overview of some of the key dynamics that I thought might be interesting to the community.
Good. Well, tell us what you found and any sources you have, and anyone watching this, tune in. I think there's going to be a lot of content that will help you, whether you're meeting with a realtor, whether you're meeting in local markets. There's going to be slides for you guys to add to your kit of tools and education. So what do we got here, brother? All
right, man. Well, sorry, I think my long guy will be done here in a minute. There's this old adage about going to college and that the more that you make, the more that you typically earn. So I did find an updated slide on that because I was kind of curious to see if that's still true. And as you can see, or may not be able to see real easily, but it really does continue. A professional degree is the highest, followed by a doctoral degree or whatever, all the way down. But one of the things that there were different attempts to study the impact of financial literacy in the United States. And the most recent one done in 2021 estimated about $350 billion a year is lost. And it doesn't seem like a lot per person, about $1,389 per person. And that's because they're looking at the total loss based on the survey over the entire population. But what was really interesting to me is that a lot of the studies talked about major losses from financial literacy. And I found that kind of interesting because if you make a mistake, especially early in your life or in your career, for example, you lose $30,000 because you do something stupid with your money or whatever, or in many cases, we know a lot of that's happened. I know people personally that have lost a tremendous amount of money because they had all their money in Bitcoin. Well, that's a financial literacy issue. That's a liquidity and diversification issue, right? The problem is if you do that at age 30 or 35, over the next 30 years, that money would have doubled 5 or 6 different times, right? So it ends up it's not that you lost $30,000 early in your life. It's that you just took $500,000 out of your savings for retirement. So we have to look at this from a dynamic of everything compounds. Financial education compounds. Financial losses compound, right? Everything compounds over time. So this attempt was to sort of look at how do you measure this? And in this other studies, an article called A Hand Up or Hand Out, Tackling America's Financial Literacy Crisis. It was just done in February of this year. They were citing another study and a similar study, again, around that $350 billion. But the biggest issue is collectively, people don't know how to manage personal finance. And this is a pretty critical, life skill. I don't know of anyone that's not using money in their lives right now. 56% of Americans can't cover $1,000 emergency expense. That means when you look at their checking and their savings and all their investments, they can't make that work. And that's a pretty astonishing number. 32% of Americans now are running out of money before their payday. As we say in our class, some people have more months than money, and some have more money than months, right? You want to have more money than months, because if your month's too long, then you've got a problem. You're going to have to either cut back on your expenses, which can be difficult, or you're going to have to figure out how to make more. And that's also, for some people, very difficult. 4 in 7 Americans are financially literate. And one of the things, I tried to dig into some of the questions they were asking, and I shared one on your site on it was the question for borrowing literacy. There was one question, and that's in the Facebook group, and some folks have already answered it. It's not a difficult question if you're in the business, but still only 57%, I believe it was, got that, or 43% got that right. And that's the entire question around borrowing literacy. And it was, how long does it take for money to double over time? Or how long will it take you to have this sort of interest grow? And I'm like, man, that's so missing the mark in terms of even the question itself. It's not a practical question for most people. But again, I use an example of a $25,000 loss by a 35-year-old. That's a $500,000 loss in retirement. And that's really important, because a $500,000 loss in retirement is not only an important number, but that could create a pretty significant revenue stream for that person in retirement. So they one of the things that I know there is that avoiding financial mistakes is more important than higher returns. Most people, when they start studying finance, it's about making more, AKA higher returns, which is really about taking more risk. And in reality, they should focus first on risk management, namely, how do I avoid making stupid mistakes? And again, they're focusing on major mistakes, giving somebody access to your money, or again, common financial mistakes. They're not even considering the impact, for example, of having the wrong mortgage product, or not refinancing when rates were down at 2% and keeping a 4 or 5%. Some of those kinds of common financial mistakes obviously aren't $1,300 a year. Those are in the millions of dollars compounding over lifetime. So I found that the way they were approaching it was interesting, but I also found myself scratching my head going, I can't even imagine that $1,389 per person as an average mistake is even beginning to scratch the surface. Yeah.
Todd, you can go back to that slide.
Sure.
We comment on a couple things. So one, that whole, compounding losses. I mean, this is one of the cornerstones of Mortgage Coach, that we always show what are the costs of different mortgage decisions over time. And this is just an important concept when trying to get a consumer, a borrower, to realize that their mortgage decision is a really important decision, and managing that mortgage over time matters a lot. And you can even tell a story, like telling that story that, hey, someone that made a $25,000 investment mistake or whatever, that's $500,000 over retirement. Just telling that story puts everything into perspective for a consumer, and having data like 56% of Americans don't have $1,000 for emergency. Like, that's a statement that you might want to put in your opening dialogue with your client, to put things in perspective that, hey, the mortgage is important, and I'm going to help you make the right decision. 32% of American workers run out of money before payday. Guys, these are important financial literacy details that can help you have a better conversation on every pre-approval with every client. And so again, you got to tailor them. And I'm not proposing here that everybody adds 3 minutes of data to all of your borrower meetings, but I'm just saying there's a tailored time to use the content that Todd's already shared. So anyways, looking forward to getting more insights from you, Todd, but I think this is a great start. And that last one, I think, is just a more, like, to be a mortgage coach, You need to understand that. You need to have go-to stories around that, and you need to integrate that into your entire advice experience with consumers.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. If you just remember that everything compounds, it's core to what you do, and that means good things compound, education compounds, losses compound, knowledge compounds, relationships, network compounds, everything. It's like a law. The other key facts from this particular study and article is that 80% of Americans have no savings account. Now, what that means is that they're managing all of their financial day-to-day interactions, including savings, in their checking account. I think in one of the charts that I shared, 99.7% of Americans now have a checking account, right? It's just ubiquitous with money in society. But we know that those checking accounts pay almost zero interest, not that a small balance is going to make that big of a difference anyway. But the fact that means, kind of using some of your approach there, Dave, that means if you're sitting down with the average American, 4 out of 5 of them have not even created a savings account, which means they haven't thought about savings in a way, because if they had, they would have to create a savings account to have a place to put that. Otherwise, it's still going into checking. If it's in checking, it's like super liquid. It's there. It's more likely to be spent. Just the segregation of having a checking and a savings account by dynamics have said, checking is what I'm spending now. Savings is money that I am saving to spend later. So I think in many ways, it's indicative of just that lack of that mindset of how important separating and starting to save is. Only 27% of Americans understand what inflation is. So we have this huge kind of inflationary crisis going on right now. And 1 in 3 Americans could explain the basic concept of what inflation is, right? And if you don't understand inflation, and I'll give you an example on why that's so important in a minute, it can really trip you up. And then this was really fascinating. I think it was a JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley article, but they were talking about the problem of financial literacy is not just one of the poor, but that 90% of wealthy families have lost all their wealth within 3 generations. So if you are successful, there's risk here too, right? You can go out and kick butt, take names, do everything right and build wealth, and then forget to teach your children in a way that they would teach their children. And then you're back into that concept. And this is something that I think it was the Rothschilds that famously created a family bank, where to access wealth from the family, you had to take knowledge, and then you had to replace the knowledge and the money in the future to show that you were compounding what you had been given. And that's how they were able to proliferate multiple generations of wealth. But most families in their studies had shown that they couldn't maintain it for more than 3 generations.
Wow. So wait,
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
back to that.
Yeah.
So again, just key concepts that, first of all, for every mortgage coach should be part of being a mortgage coach. You know this stuff, you understand this stuff. You have go-to stories when you need to bring this out of the toolkit and have a conversation. And love it, Todd. Love all the research you're doing. Love all the insights you're bringing.
Thanks, man. So let's take a practical example. So there's a tip, a simple, I like, rule of 72, things you can remember. Because if you're at a cocktail party or having dinner and you talk about this stuff, it gives you something to kind of get your teeth into. So there's this whole thing, a simple strategy for retirement is 11 times your salary plus Social Security would typically replace your income, right? So if you make $100,000 right now, and that's the income that you want in the future, to replace that, you would need 11 times that plus Social Security. So 11 times 100,000 is 1.1 million. I can do that in my head. But if you don't understand inflation, 1.1 million in today's dollars will not buy for you what you're going to need in 20 years, let's say when you retire. So you have to inflate that by the inflation rate. We're going to use 3% as a historical average. So what that means is it's 3% inflation times 20 years, if it's 20 years till you retire, times 100,000, you've got 160,000. So in other words, you've got 100,000 now, but I've got to inflate that by $60,000 to get the same spending power today. 160,000 times 11 is 1.76 million. All right. Yeah, I got my leaf blower here. All right, so 1.76. So let's back test that, right? If you didn't understand inflation and you heard about this 11x salary plus Social Security rule, you could be like, okay, 11 times my salary is 1.1 million. That's what I need to have in retirement, but you would be incredibly short for your actual goal or objective. So let's work it backwards. Typically 4% from it's called a Monte Carlo simulation. If you look at every possible scenario that can happen, thousands of simulations, you can withdraw 4% of your income and never touch your principal. That means if you start withdrawing your money the day before the worst bear crisis we've ever seen, or the worst market meltdown, right, or the market goes up, I can withdraw 4% a year. Follow me? So if I have $1 million in my savings account, I could pull 40,000 a year off that and never touch the million. Okay. So if that's true, then 1.76 times 44% is $70,000. And the average American draws about 30,000 Social Security. So if I had 1.76 million and I withdrew 4%, that's 70,000 plus 30,000, I've got $100,000, right? So, I mean, retirement planning can be really complicated, but you could actually just sit down right now and say, if I'm making 100,000 right now and I'd be happy in retirement with all my stuff paid off, making 100,000, then you could come up with about 1.76 million as a target and work to save for that and figure out based on how much time I have before retirement, what would I need to put away and save for that. But what really kind of shocked me is if you look on the right there, that chart is showing the percentage of consumers that are very confident on the left, very or somewhat confident in retirement, and on the right, 20% not too confident. So 80% of Americans say what? I'm feeling really good about retirement. The bottom chart shows the average total retirement savings in the United States by age. So if you look there at 64 to 65 years and 65 to 69, the number's right above 200,000. It's about 220,000. So think about the example we just went through. If the average person in retirement has $220,000 saved, they're also in the 80% somewhat or very confident in their retirement. If you took $200,000 times 4%, that's $8,000 a year that they could conceivably withdraw for their retirement. Plus Social Security means they're living on $38,000 a year. So the last thing you want to do is become financially literate in retirement because you have time to learn the stuff then. The problem is if you learn it then, what's happening? You have completely missed the opportunity to compound, where $100 a month compounding over your career at 45 years is about $1.5 million, depending on your return. So, I mean, again, it's not rocket science, it's just time and money. But this is one of the things that really stood out to me is surprising how confident people are, yet the numbers bear that most of them are woefully prepared. Make sense? I know there's a lot on this page, but it was just sort of a real eye-opener that, again, given that 2 out of 3 Americans don't understand inflation, you could take a very simple planning tool like 11 times your salary plus Social Security to replace your income and still really misunderstand it if you don't know that you have to inflate your salary based on the number of years before retirement. But even then, you know, again, if you want to have $100,000 right now and you're 45 years old, you should have a plan to get to 1.7 million today by the time you're 65.
Loving the education you're bringing, brother. Keep it going.
All right. So Milken Institute in 2021 did a very exhaustive study on financial literacy. What's interesting in their paper, they said there are 3 things that we have to do. 1, we've got to define financial literacy. 2, we've got to figure out how do we assess at key points in people's lives that they are financially literate. And then 3, we've got to use technology. We've got to use technology to leverage the financial literacy when and where it's actually needed. So I think it's kind of interesting, right? You know, we got to agree on what it is, and then we got to know that we're doing a good job If you, and again, apply these things practically. Don't think about the globe right now. Think about your family. All right. How would I define financial literacy within my family? How would I assess my children, for example, to see if they get it? And then are there technology or tools and things I can use to reinforce that? If you were working with your clients right now, how would you define for yourself and for your clients what is financial literacy? How would you check in with them, annual reviews, things like that, to make sure they're on track? And then what technology might you consider using to make sure, again, that they're staying on top of things? So I went out looking for the best. Yeah, go ahead.
So first of all, I love this slide because it just creates such clarity around what we all need to do. And Todd is going to show us some definitions out there right now, but I would push any mortgage coach that has a definition that you're using in the marketplace. Love to know what it is. And also, what are all the different technologies? I mean, clearly Mortgage Coach, when it comes to doing a mortgage, is a great piece of technology, but would love to just collaborate, guys. This is a mastermind. If you have questions, we're going to be wrapping this up within 5 minutes. So get your questions in quick. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, you can still put questions down below. We'll answer them. But I would love to see, how do you define it? What are some technologies you're using to help consumers, borrowers with this? So anyways, keep it going. Let's see the definition you got, Todd.
Yeah. So I looked at a lot of them, and this was my favorite. It was the World Bank definition. It said financial literacy represents the level of aptitude in understanding personal finance. It refers to awareness and knowledge of key financial concepts required for managing personal finances, and it's generally used as a narrower term than financial capability. Now, this was kind of new for me because I hadn't really heard this, and they go on to define this, and this is what I really enjoyed reading, is financial capability is the ability of the consumer to use the financial literacy to make better informed decisions about managing their finances. It encompasses the knowledge, literacy, attitudes, skills, behaviors, et cetera, in this process. And so I kind of threw my own quote into here because, when I think about this, because I've been around this for a while, financial literacy is like anything. When you're teaching any topic, it takes time, right? Capability, and the way they're defining it, is that ability to make an informed decision. So as professionals, we can provide literacy over time, but you can provide capability in any instant where you're providing advice. Because capability is where you're showing someone the right product, the right interest rate, the right amount to borrow, the right way to pay debt. That is literacy, but you're providing it at the point of need. And that's what Milken was saying. We have to have the ability to deliver this at the point of when it's needed. And we know most consumers spend more time in a given year planning a vacation than they spend their entire life on financial literacy. Think about that. The average American spends more time planning a vacation they'll spend over their lifetime planning their retirement. So these kind of interventions where you're providing literacy and capability at the same time are really incredibly valuable and critical.
Powerful.
So, yeah, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but this is how you define literacy. It's knowledge, it's skills, it's attitudes, and it's behaviors. So if you're thinking about financial literacy for your family, make it real and make it small. What knowledge do we need? What skills do we need? How do we need to shift attitudes about money? And ultimately, how can I see and measure those in day-to-day behaviors? This was one thing I wanted to share. It's fascinating. The U.S. government is committed to financial literacy. They spend $300 million a year on financial literacy. That's the current U.S. budget based on the U.S. Financial Literacy Initiative. If you look about that, 50 million of that is dedicated to housing and lending. So that's a pretty good number. Now, divide that by the number of U.S. adults in the United States. That's 18 cents per U.S. adult citizen if you were to take that budget and look at it extrapolated over the fact that we have 258 million adults in the United States. So it's about 18 cents per adult. So it sounds like a lot of money, but in reality, there's really not a whole lot of resources being put to the test here. And I think one of the things I love about the impact we can have, if you look at where the money is, and I shared this, on our nonprofit side the other day, the bottom 99%. So we hear about the 1%, right? The wealthy. So take them out for a minute. The bottom 99% of all of us have 85.4% of our wealth in the primary and or secondary residences we own. And we are responsible for 95.3% of all debt in the United States today, right? That's based on the last Federal Reserve paper. So when you think about the impact of the ability to help people, I mean, most of their wealth is in real estate, and their biggest expense is probably their debt. So there's an impact here at the 99% level. And I'd say that's a pretty good, statistic. If you were in Vegas, if I could win 99% of the time, 99% of your consumers are probably going to be able to help. And if they looked at housing challenges, this was another Milken study on pathways to homeownership. They said if you want to create opportunities and grow the market, you have to increase savings, you have to educate the borrower, and you have to help them understand credit, because those were the three biggest obstacles that they found were getting in the way of the consumer growing and becoming a better contributor to our society as it relates to moving from renting to owning. And we can talk a lot about why this wealth is in real estate. It's because small amounts compounding over time with leverage and house appreciation ends up creating a forced savings plan, which is why most of the 99%, as you can see here, have the majority of their wealth here in real estate.
So and guys, this is such a massive opportunity as a mortgage advisor and a mortgage coach, helping consumers manage their equity and their mortgage and their liability. It's the biggest thing we could do for a borrower, a homeowner, at least 99% of them, and it's probably one of the best ways we could just serve America. So, hey Todd, have you done a blog post on this one yet?
Yes, yeah. There's one. I don't think it's in our room, but on the National Institute, the NIFE Facebook page, I've got a bunch more of these slides that I pulled out.
Just this one, where the money is for a mortgage professional to create some, I don't know. First of all, I think this is a conversation. Do you bring it up with every client? No, but there is a way to have a conversation here that makes the mortgage decision more important in the eyes of the consumer. Because when it comes to rate shopping, they're just thinking, rates and closing costs, but there's you want to work with a mortgage coach who delivers advice, because advice is always going to beat price. And I just feel like there'd be a really good blog post for you to do just around this one page.
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right, let's keep going. Let's wrap it up if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, I was thinking about this from the perspective of mortgage coach, and how do you make your own dent in the universe, right? How do you carve out for yourself impact? Because you're not going to solve this problem for the world. I'm not going to. But I can solve it possibly within my family, within people that I know, people I come into contact with, other people that are interested in this. In the case of mortgage coach, define financial literacy and define it potentially as the people you come into contact with that are buying, selling, or refinancing a house. And you know that 99% of America's wealth is in real estate. So you have technology, and you can support the loan officer in this financial capability. Because again, the challenge with financial capabilities is harder to scale. That's why you need technology. Like if Dave calls me and says, I got a question for you, a financial question about estate planning, right? I can maybe answer his question and provide capability in that moment, but that's different than literacy, where I'm trying to sort of maybe broadly talk about it. But for yourself, every client you come into contact with, there's an opportunity for literacy and capability. And over time, that will compound. Because it's always cool to hear people say they read the book or they did this or that, they made a decision, and because they put less down, it helped them in some way, right? And maybe they tell someone else and they share someone else. And the other challenge, which I also found really interesting, is that only 46% of the Americans have no retirement savings, right? At between 18 and 29, still 38% of Americans have not even started a retirement savings program yet, which is why, to me, starting it later in life is great. You always plant a tree as early as you know to plant a tree, and can't plant a tree. Most important thing you can do is plant it really early. Get that thing started, even if it's $1 a month, just get the behavior in place. But 46% of U.S. employers are saying they have or will have a financial literacy program for adult workers by the end of the last year. And this was based on a Bank of America study. So, I also feel there's a growing need for companies to do for employees what the government isn't able to do. So that would be the other thing when you're thinking about the impact you have at the individual level. Again, literacy and capability, there's also your company, right? Your ability to say to the company, this is important. I want everyone to level up their game and have that impact in a way that they could become a beacon, spreading, again, whatever financial literacy and stuff that they can take with them. But if it just helps them getting a retirement plan in place, making good financial decisions, deciding when to rent and when to actually borrow, starting to put money away, making sure they have insurance and things that they can't afford to lose, stuff like that. It really isn't rocket science, but it does require a little bit of literacy, a little bit of implementation, and again, a little bit of time.
Hey, and Todd, go back to that.
Yeah.
This, kind of wrap a bow around it, guy. You could take these slides with a couple TCAs and maybe a couple other insights, and you could go make a great pitch. Partner with a financial planner and a CPA, and go out to local companies and do training. 30-minute workshops around the key concepts that a few members of your wealth team, remember guys, we talked about being the captain of the wealth team. This is like a great conversation to have with your wealth team and to take out to local companies, local schools, and not only get loans. Trust me, if you get out there and you bring this value, you're going to get loans. Even if you're in a school, you're going to have parents that do loans with you. You're going to have teachers that do loans, but you're also just making the world better. So anyways, Todd, this is awesome. Show that next slide just to make sure everyone knows, borrowsmartuniversity.com, guys. It's just a gold mine. Todd's blog is a must read. Are you actually getting a post in there every day now?
I kind of vacillate, but I get 3 to 4 a week, and then some days like yeah, and then but that's where I think I had a chart storm this week. I think I posted like 20 times on the Facebook nonprofit page of just charts and little ideas and anecdotes, because there was so much information I found as I was reading all this stuff I wanted to share, and some of those I'll probably expand out into blog posts over time. But yeah, I'm trying to spend half hour, 45 minutes a day, either getting a blog post out or just pulling stuff together and sharing it. And
so stop sharing screen real quick and just kind of fireside close real quick. Remember, Mortgage Coach community, if you have questions, put them in chat. Todd posts regularly in our Facebook group, and those are all tagged as insights. I want to remind people that we have topic tags so that you can pull up some of the content that's that's valuable long term, that really helps you educate. So Todd, I really appreciate that. I love your blog. I read it every day. Well, I read it whenever you put posts. I get posts. I always there's a lot of noise out there, and what you do is not noise. It's value, it's signal, it's education. Any closing thoughts for folks before we call it a day?
Yeah, no, just on the blog, if you'll sign up, you'll get a post every time it comes to you as an email, and you can click on it. Some people are like, I read one of your things, but when do you post? I'm like, just, every time I post, just sign up. It's free. Get in there, and then we'll send you all kinds of cool stuff.
All right, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, brother.
If you guys got value from this, give it a like, share it with other friends that, mortgage friends, financial planner friends. And if you don't already subscribe to the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel, go hit it today. Refer your friends to it. Take care, y'all. This is a wrap.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Todd.